So, good evening, everyone. I am Molly, the Kush RN, and you have reached Conversations with Kush podcast. Tonight, we have two incredible guests, Elizabeth Sage from Sage Advice and Ghislaine Ball from Terpene Tasting Kit, excuse me. So, ladies, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Elizabeth, why don't you start? How you came to cannabis and how it's really transformed your life.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah. So nice to be here. I came to cannabis when I was 15 as the first time that I ever tried it. And throughout my high school and college years was a fairly consistent user, although access to it made it difficult to be able to use as consistently as I think would have been beneficial to me.
Okay.
And throughout my 20s and 30s was, a professional, but still used that as my medicine as opposed to pharmaceuticals. And it was, interesting working in corporate America and having sort of, a secret life. I lived in Chicago at the time. I was going to undesirable neighborhoods to get my medicine, things like that. And so I moved back to Minnesota in 2018, and shortly after, Chicago legalized by executive order. So it wasn't something that was on the table for me when I lived there. I moved here to Minnesota. I knew that I wanted to get into the cannabis industry. And so in 2021, I started the Ganjier Program. I went through that. I got certified in later 2021, September. And then in 2022, I launched my own business, helping people navigate this challenging space, helping other people who are looking for education, looking for career pathways, and empowering this space to have career professionals in it.
Awesome. How about from you, Ghislaine?
I actually came to cannabis quite a bit later in life. I was in my late 30s, and my brother-in-law, who is no longer with us, was having a lot of health problems, and he had run through the pharmacopoeia with his regular doctor, and his regular doctor. They were living in Wabasha, Minnesota. He and my husband's sister and their children were living in Wabasha, Minnesota. She had a fairly high-profile job. So they were really not in a position. Oh, so I skipped a part of the story. He had run through the pharmacopoeia with his anxiety medication.
Okay.
And his doctor said to him, can't legally prescribe this to you. And this is like, I want to say 07, 06, 07, 08. And his physician said, I can't legally recommend this, but have you tried cannabis? And Mark had been a very regular user all through college. And when he and Mary had kids, he stopped using because that was the responsible thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's when he started using the anti-anxiety medication, the pharmaceuticals, which ended up it was not the best for his kidneys and his liver and things like that. It also didn't help him all the time. He still had pretty dramatic mood swings, whereas the cannabis had worked beautifully for him. His all through his 20s and most of his 30s, and when he stopped, and so going back to it, and that was actually our introduction into cannabis. My husband works at the Minnesota Historical Society, and I was working at the University of St. Thomas at the time. And you'd think that we would have been able to find cannabis, but we just weren't. We weren't cannabis users.
Sure, dialed in.
I mean, you could walk across the university. I was on staff. I couldn't nudge one of the kids and be like, "Hey, you got a plug?"
I noticed you smelled like weed.
I noticed this, there's this green haze following you.
Yeah.
So we ended up meeting this gentleman who was a legacy farmer in Mendocino. He and his partner at the time were part of the Back to the Land movement in the late 60s, early 70s, and were part of a community that lived up there. The community was then decimated by AIDS in the 80s, and through our meeting with him and getting to know him, it was an amazing experience. We even went up there a couple of different times to trim for him to trim his crop as it came in, which was an incredible experience. And we met so many different people. We met Dennis Perrone, and I had a run We stayed at the Cozy Castro Castle a couple of times and had wonderful conversations with Dennis Perone, and just was introduced. So Joe works at the Minnesota Historical Society, and through all of these interactions, it became very clear that the primary history was in the process of being lost.
Okay.
Both of us come to, so then that comes, my second introduction to cannabis was from academia. Joe then started a national nonprofit called the 420 Archive, and for almost 10 years they collected primary research of cannabis prohibition across the United States.
Incredible.
In 2016 I left the University of St. Thomas, and I took a position with the 420 Archive as the managing director, and spent 2 summers out in Northern California interacting with legacy farmers and tabling at 215 events, and really getting deeply involved in the community and living. I lived on cannabis farms for 2 months one summer and 5 months another summer, doing that primary. It was academically rigorous primary research, and it was amazing. It was an absolutely amazing experience.
Wow.
That work is actually in 2019. We ran out of funding. The good news is that so we turned the project over to the UC Berkeley, the Bancroft Library at UC Berkeley.
Okay.
So it's now part of the work that the primary research that we collected is now part of the permanent collection at the Bancroft Library at UC Berkeley, and I believe it is going to be searchable at some point soon. But it is the largest collection of oral histories in the United States of cannabis prohibition.
That is incredible.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of nerd points.
Yeah. No, you're a real OG like that.
No.
That's incredible. Yeah.
I've smoked with some OGs. Big difference.
So I always ask people, and I bet for both of you, there's been a variety of ways, but in what is the most poignant way that cannabis has transformed your life?
I would say just in its ability to bring people together in a way that I don't see a lot of other things bringing people together. And it's not specifically the industry, because that does not necessarily bring people together, but it's the idea that we have something that we can control, that we can work with, that helps nourish us, it helps sustain us, it helps heal us. And seeing people cut off from that and then reconnected to that has been really, really powerful.
Agreed. And I feel that 100%. And it's really our way to develop a relationship with the plant. I think that's just really, I hope that when people watch the podcast, like that's the takeaway, is that you get to decide how cannabis works for you.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of wonderful research being done. Michael Pollan has written a lot about cannabis and about the medicinal benefits for PTSD. They're doing a lot of studies specifically using psychotropic drugs, not just cannabis, but other psychedelic drugs, of which there are many.
Right.
So many, especially here in the Western Hemisphere. Central America has a considerable number. Morning glories. We can grow them in the backyard. They're hallucinogenic. Yeah. But using hallucinogens mindfully and with intention, and helping us navigate a lot of the emotions that we are feeling in this very rushed, busy, lots of emotions world.
That really can become trapped in your body. You know, like I feel
generationally, yes, absolutely. The stress changes our DNA. We have clinical studies to show that.
I think within your tissues, I think pain is a byproduct of that, of emotions being trapped in your body, or can be. So tell me, for you, what's been the most transitional part of cannabis?
I would say medicinal. The medicinal benefit has been the most transformational. It started with my brother-in-law, but I had been taking pharmaceuticals for anxiety for 20 years. seeing how Mark was using it, and then learning how to do all kinds of infusions because his child smelled it. He smelled him smoking.
Sure.
And this was some time ago, and they were they were getting schooled at their grammar school that drugs are bad, that cannabis is only criminals do cannabis.
Right.
And the child was part of the like right in the middle of the DARE program. So there was a lot of crying and hysteria that daddy was a drug addict and he is going to prison from the 9-year-old. So that was like really traumatic for them.
Sure.
So that's when Auntie Ghislaine says, okay, I like to cook. I can figure out how to do this in a good way for you. And so, yeah, that's how I started doing infusions and really falling down that rabbit hole, which has been actually pretty interesting.
Let's talk more about that then. Let's talk about the terpene kit and how you help people curate their experience.
So the terpene tasting kit came about from two experiences, kind of like the convergence of two experiences. The first one was living through the 90s with wine tasting kits. And I remember going over to people's houses. I'm just that old. We'd have the wine tasting kits, and you could get one for Merlot and you can get one for Chardonnay. And it was really just an excuse for everybody to grab a couple of bottles of wine, never open the kit, and just get schnockered over at each other's houses on a weeknight. And then, but then I had having that experience for 2 summers in Northern California and being with people who were breeding. People who were not just, but who had been breeding and really creating their own strain, like who had been tweaking and playing with, like this strain was their life's work that they had been working on for 30 years. And it worked with the area that they were growing it in, and it worked with their bodies.
Right.
Like that was talk about growing your own medicine.
Well, and I think that was back in the Prop 215 days,
and that was
people
in the Prop
were
215.
caregivers, and so you had people that you were dedicating yourself, your time, and your plants to helping, and so that there was a lot of that really went into crowdsourcing the things that were of the most benefit to the community.
And there was also that tradition, that decades of heritage of working with the plant in environments, in the same environment, and medicine makers. There are a lot of hill witches up there, and they are all making medicine. And women were the farmers. So that was one of the things that was real, that became evident through collecting our research, that while the face of cannabis was male, the people who were actually growing it were women. And they were also the medicine makers, and they were the ones who were having these relationships with the plant. And that's the medicine that was coming out of the hills.
Sure.
The face was male, but the hands and the heart were female.
A lot of the risk was male too, though,
and
because
the
women
absolutely.
were at home to make sure they could take care of the kids, because so often the men got dragged away.
That was definitely a part of Prohibition culture, and we could go into the history of that. Most of it was market farming until the war on drugs was declared. It was nobody was living large. They were paying the mortgage, and they were keeping shoes on, and they're keeping their kids fed.
Sure.
But then the war on drugs happened, and the price of cannabis shot through the roof, and that's when the problems moved into the area.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the war on drugs was declared that they actually had a problem.
Right.
So, and then even still, like I talk about this, if the government, if it wasn't about a show of militarization, if you really wanted to eradicate the plant from Humboldt, Mendocino, and Trinity counties, all you had to do was go to a high hill with a male plant and wave it around.
Right.
Like that's not quite the photo op. That's not quite the photo op than as the military helicopter flying in
and
with
the AR-16s,
with everybody wearing the suits and and carrying
Full
the
SWAT.
yeah.
Right.
It doesn't, not quite the photo op, but
True.
and it would have been truly effective.
I love what you said earlier about how you use cannabis for anxiety. So you can kind of dial into where, what strains work well for you and identify those terpenes.
Yeah. So hanging out with a lot of folks who had been plant touching and medicine making and who were breeding who had their own nursery programs going, and they were pheno hunting. The terms, different terpenes would come up all the time. When you talk to a lot of the farmers out there, Nate talks about how he uses terpenes as markers for when he's pheno hunting, for when he's developing new strains. So coming from that experience and also coming from the 90s, when we turned over the assets of the 420 archive to UC Berkeley, I was looking around, and this was 2019, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Yeah. And my time with cannabis and my time with people who had deep, long-standing relationships with the plant had been utterly transformative. And I was kind of like, oh, what do I do next? But then I had this idea of developing a tasting kit for cannabis based on terpenes.
So this actually came before Ganjier and everything.
Yes, actually,
Wow.
my first iteration of the terpene kit was in 2019, and it consisted of the eight most common terpenes that are found in cannabis.
Okay.
And it had a little tasting guide, and it had a fun little box. And my friend of mine was making them up in Mendo, and they were made out of like upcycled redwood, and it was
Beautiful.
it was fun.
Yeah.
And then I with my fresh and fabulous marketing plan, I did R&D all through 2019, and March 1st of 2020, with my fresh and fabulous marketing plan, I went to market with a product that was essentially hold this up to your nose, take a big whiff, and pass it to your friend.
Nice.
Very, very COVID friendly.
Yeah,
Yes,
very
it was,
COVID friendly.
and then 6 days later, the world shut down on a global pandemic.
Yes.
So,
I'm good.
Which actually turned out to not be the worst thing that happened at that time. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
As far as mistakes that I made like every single mistake possible, which it actually turns out the universe provides, because in 21, I started the online component of the Ganjier program. So I had actually, I did the Trichome Institute. I thought I knew a lot about, just from my experiences and from interacting, I knew a lot about cannabis. But I also knew that that I didn't have a framework. I come from academia. So
Right.
I'm always the person, like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So I'm like, I don't feel like I have a framework. I don't really feel like I have an idea of what I don't know. Like,
Yep.
So I went and signed up for the Trichome Institute which is an online program. It was really fascinating. And then in 21, I had heard that the Ganjier program was being developed. And I knew some of the folks who were participating in its development. And in 21, so I kind of thought, I'll do both. I'll do the Trichome Institute, and then I'm going to do the Ganjier. And I started the Ganjier, and I really only had the intention of doing the online component.
Were you in the first cohort then?
I was not.
Okay. Were you, Elizabeth?
Mhm.
Okay. I thought so. And Mo?
This one beat me to it.
Did you guys know each other prior to Ganjier? Okay.
We did not.
Nope. Both Minnesotans
Okay.
live here and have very similar regards for the plant.
Yes.
But no, we hadn't met each other.
I've heard that Minnesota has the second largest community outside of Humboldt of Ganjiers. Is that true? Am I getting this right?
I think so, Rob. I mean,
I would not be surprised to hear
Yeah.
that.
that maybe New York, somewhere there is quite
There's
a big.
a lot of us in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's pretty close.
I love the component of almost like aftercare of the Ganjier program, where like you need to continue to like study and keep learning and be in community with each other, and like that fostering that community is like a real big part of that.
I think the industry is so dynamic and frequently changing. So you have to, if you are doing anything that's static or evergreen, it's not going to be able to stay current.
Right.
Also, like, and we'll talk about the assessment protocol in a minute. But the assessment protocol, like part of the beauty of it is that it's about being consistent, less than it is about being right.
And I saw that there's like an app now, so
there's
can, like,
an app for that. There's an app for that.
You can start inputting the information, like where it was grown, all of those things, and
because we're all calibrated to each other. And we stay calibrated to each other through group activities. We are, no matter where in the world you are, if you're talking to a certified Ganjier, you're going to be getting virtually like the same answer.
I love that terminology, that calibration. I love that. Yeah.
So it's about being consistent.
Okay.
Yeah. And then honestly, like if you're familiar with the Wine Spectator, you'll see a lot of the stuff. It's in the 80s and the 90s. Like that's a lot of the stuff that the Ganjiers, the assessment protocol. The assessment protocol can be taught to anybody. It's not a magical thing. It's learning it and applying your knowledge.
I had to look it up. I had to look it up when when I was selected as one of the judges. I was like, clearly someone made a mistake, but let me get myself up to speed here on what I need to be evaluating. So I, kind of went through that process a bit through YouTube.
I mean, it's an interesting, quality is subjective a bit, but there are markers that you can put into place and metrics that you can measure. And so this app is really designed to take those things that you can measure objectively and do so. And experience is completely subjective. If I like something that's a little racier and that doesn't work for Ghislaine, we're going to have very different experiences. And that could mean the difference between I gave it a 93 and she gave it an 81. Right. So you have to be able to look at something and the lens with which you're viewing it through. And I also think that we're in a point in our economy where ultimately it's the dollar is which is driving the sales.
For sure.
And so as great as something that we think is, if people don't have the funds to afford it, then that's not the medicine for the people because the people can't get it. So there's an intersection between quality and price that needs to be brought forth in the market a little bit more.
I think in even just like regular plugs out there, though, they'll be like, well, I have this level of cannabis or I have this level if you want to pay a little bit more, right? Like,
but what is that based on, right? Is that based on their assessment? Is it based on the way that it was grown? Is it based on like that it's superior genetics, or is it based on the fact that it looks a little bit frostier and maybe smells a little bit terpier?
Or maybe just gets them a little more high. I feel like, the regular consumer is just like a lot of times anyway, just kind of looking for that couch lock, like what's going to give me the highest kind of.
And that's actually not THC level.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's changing too, though.
I do too.
As the market matures,
I think
the education level rises and people have a better understanding that the higher THC is not necessarily going to have the stronger effects.
Agreed. And I think programs like the Ganjier program are really going to help the consumer experience too.
Well, and they start to begin microdosing too, and what that means. And I think Minnesota has been a great example for people to understand. We have a lot of edibles that are 1 milligram, 2.5, they're 5, they're not more than 10. It's a real easy way for people to start dabbling without being overwhelmed or having one of the experiences that people used to have with edibles, which is you just get completely zooted and you never want to go through that again.
Yeah. And those microdosers are my target market, right? Like I'm bringing people into cannabis. I'm making sure that they don't have like a scary experience or so.
And over 50 is the largest growing demographic of new user.
Right.
So that is our focus.
We need an ashtray.
Yes, we do. Gabe, could you bring us an ashtray?
I'll look for one. Yes, sir.
Do you want to talk more about the terpene?
Oh yeah. So so the original version was the 8 most commonly found terpenes in cannabis. This is an updated iteration, and it is actually the 6 super classes of terpenes that, as defined by SC Labs in California. So SC Labs has decades worth of data from doing analyses of flowers, and what they did is they created an algorithm, and they sent that algorithm to eat through all of the data, and they came out with a classification system.
Okay.
They discovered that virtually all, like 99% of all commercially available cannabis that is commercially available in the United States falls under one of 6 super classes. And what a super class is so for cannabis, we have the terpene classification system, and to compare that to beer, it's like it's like learning it's like learning that that stouts exist and IPAs exist and wheat beers and pilsners. So that is also a classification system for beer.
So with the kit, are you training people's palate?
Yes. Okay. So the kit, how you use the kit, you use the kit in one of 2 ways. The kit teaches you what the terpene smells like, so that when you go in wherever you are, even to no matter what. So strain names are notoriously unreliable.
Absolutely. So I always tell people
what does it smell like? And this is an old hippie adage. You have the lemon and the citrus in the morning, and you have the fuel in the evening. But that actually relates to the terpenes, limonene, which is more energizing, and then myrcene, which is more sedative. So the fuels are usually found in the myrcene category,
and actually potentiates the THC.
And then you have the entourage effect, right, which is the spectrum of cannabinoids, including all of the different THCs, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then the spectrum of cannabinoids that start with a C, of which there are like over 100.
Right.
And then you have the terpenes that are available in that trichome. Along with all of the waxes and the phenols and the flavonoids and all of these things together. All the things. Anthracyanins. Well, that's actually the plant material. Oh. So, all of these things combined together using what we call the entourage effect. The sum is more than the whole is more than the sum of its parts.
It's the synergy.
It's the interaction that creates the collective experience. But using this kit, you can learn so in more mature markets in California and in Colorado, the higher end dispensaries are starting to merchandise their flower offerings and according to dominant terpene, because that's
Perfect.
How people are shopping for them.
Yes.
And it's like walking into a bar and being able to walk up to before you go up to the bar, knowing that you're in the mood for a pilsner or a stout, because those are 2 very different experiences.
For sure. So
Thank you. And then, but the other thing that the terpene kit does, so it doesn't just teach you the 6 super classes, it also helps you to, if you're interested in cannabis as part of a gustatory experience, and we all are, and in craft cannabis, like it's sky's the limit. There's so many amazing smells and flavors that are coming up from all kinds of beautiful artists using they're manipulating their mediums to create this incredible thing. It also helps the terpene kit helps you develop your palate underneath that, so as to help you have the descriptors for describing what you're tasting in the craft cannabis flower. So beta caryophyllene, that's peppery. Is that expressing itself as black pepper? Is it expressing itself as red pepper flakes that you put on a pizza, or is it expressing itself as horseradish? Like, these are all really different peppers, and those are different ways of experiencing and even identifying that beta caryophyllene exists in the flower that you're enjoying, that you're tasting.
Right.
So it's a relationship that you learn, and then we all have different physiological responses. So how a myrcene caryophyllene, there are, generally speaking, and they're doing case studies these days that are confirming the anecdotal information that we've had for numbers of years about how the different terpenes affect us. But case studies are now being conducted, and they're confirming that all of this anecdotal information is in fact true.
I think Dr. Jean Talleyrand is actually working with a dispensary out in California to do terpene identifying and classifying those.
They're doing a color classification.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And yes, they're doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And they're just approaching it using a different visual interface. So you also have flavor wheels.
And I think that will be helpful to the consumer that is coming in and they have very limited knowledge of cannabis to be able to quickly identify oh, this blue one is going to work well for me. Or, this green one might be a little bit too much sedative property. I'm looking for something for anxiety, but I don't want to be still feeling the effects the next day kind of thing. But anyway.
It's interesting if you look at the color categories that they chose and where the block points for all of the cultivars that they look at, because the majority of them are falling in sort of a middle category.
They are, yeah.
And so I think that speaks to how frequently you see the same clusters of terpenes together in plants.
Oh my gosh, yes. Especially in what we're seeing is commercially available.
Sure.
Virtually everything we come across, a horrifying percentage, is that myrcene beta caryophyllene limonene mix.
Right.
And it's just everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So I'm excited to come across new stuff these days. Stuff that's
getting a little old for you, that combo.
It's delicious.
Oh, okay.
I mean, who doesn't like it? It's like the world. It's like an IPA. I love an IPA, and there's a huge the spectrum of flavors available in that combination of just those three dominant terpenes. A crazy huge spectrum of flavors available. That grouping contains all the cakes. It contains most of the fuels. It contains most of the purples. That's a lot of the varietals we get these days. It's all in that. So, but it's hard to but man, do I love my terpinolene. That's some goddess weed. That's really good.
What I like is that I think Mo Smith might have said, when you open up the jar and you smell it and you're like, nah, that one's not for me. It won't interact well with your body, but the one that you smell it and you're like, whoa, that one's going to be the one for you. The nose knows, right?
The nose knows.
So,
with that said, and this is again with I do primarily combustibles or topicals. Okay. But there are days for me, beta caryophyllene, I have a little bit of a histamine reaction to it. But it really, it is very mentally relaxing for me. Very. And some days I'm not feeling like smoking anything beta caryophyllene, but I know that I need to smoke something that's
hope that one day I am that tuned into my cannabis, as tuned in as you are. I want to be there.
Myrcene, beta caryophyllene dominant, with myrcene coming up right behind it, and no slices of limonene.
Nice.
That's because that's my. We're done for the day.
Yeah. The unravel.
That's what you want to get into a hot bubble bath with.
Yeah. Nice.
That's and salts. That's your day done.
Elizabeth, let's hear from you. I want to talk about what projects you have going on. You have a whole page on the Ganjier website where people can contact you and get in tune and get in community. So I love that.
Fancy lady.
I know. I should find that website.
You should.
It's up there. Pull that up, Gabe, if you could, when you have a second.
Which one? I've got her website ready to go.
The Ganjier website.
Okay.
And go to like contact us or about us.
Okay.
And
Yep. 1 minute.
Your logo is like front and center. Like, okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, the program and the concept behind it and what they built, I think, is just such an incredible thing. And it's a needed thing in the industry. And there's so much that we lost throughout Prohibition where other industries have been able to scale and organize and do things that we're just trying to play catch up to.
Yeah.
And so my experience through the program was so good, going out and spending time in that community. And like Ghislaine said, like it's absolutely beautiful. You fall in love with the history of it and you understand what a lot of these people went through for so many years. And I benefited from that. We all did.
Right.
And so making sure that that legacy still has an opportunity to move forward into this new market, that the people who have been the arbiters of quality are the ones that are helping people understand what those markers are, and that there are people that are invested in having quality in the industry. And like I said, quality doesn't mean you always have to have the best weed. It means that you're able to grow different things at different price points that help different kinds of people. Like there's such a scale to what that means and what someone can do with the skills once you have it. But again, the information that people were able to share so freely about traditional agriculture over time is not something that farmers have been able to do. So it's really incredible to see them come out of the woodworks, be able to share with each other, learn from each other. And I think, we have largely benefited from that because, these last 5 to 10 years with, legal cannabis, recreational adult use, the 25 years of medical use that we've had, it's made it better for everyone.
Oh, it absolutely has. How do we take all of this complex information and translate it to the new consumer?
I think bit by bit, like piece by piece. And, Minnesota has an interesting entry into the market. And I think in some ways it pushes us forward because it's very normalized in our society, because it's in beverages, because it's in gummies and topicals, and it's not floating around the streets the way it is in other legal states. But at the same time, when that day comes, and that day is coming sooner rather than later, I think there's still a stigma that's attached to smoking and consumption that people are going to need to. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like either legal cannabis or not, you can't complain about the smell and people utilizing their medicine, how it works best for them. But I'm also still like, I think people should be able to smoke in public too. And I don't smoke, but I still believe they should.
I agree. You mean cigarettes?
Yeah. If bars want to have smoking, like they should be allowed to do that.
Yeah. I mean, there's almost that stigma now, like, oh, you're smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like right on. Like everybody's trying to make you quit. Like you keep on.
Say, guys, I have the website up if you want to guide me a little bit where to go.
Look under like request info and go to, can you highlight on that again? Or go to.
It just goes right to that.
Go to student resources.
Okay.
Do you know where it's at, Elizabeth?
I don't.
You're in there, girl. You got like a whole page, and scroll down. It's way at the bottom of wherever it was. There. Was it up? No. Keep going.
No, but those cabins, if you go back, there it is.
Oh yeah. There she is.
If you go back to those cabins, those are available. So for anybody who ever wants to have the Ganjier experience, but doesn't want to go through the program per se, they have curated experiences where you or in a group of people can go out. There's 6 cabins. They're amazing. They have a private chef. He's amazing. You can have your own little mini weed camp and have it tailored exactly to what you want. So if there are any companies that are looking for incentives for their employees or something fun to do, like some really expensive team building, there is opportunity there.
We need that here.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on that.
Excellent.
Where is this?
This is in Northern California.
It looks incredible.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's pretty magical. But actually, we're
do
working
the students get to live there too, though, while they're
you
there?
You can.
Okay. I just didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. Actually, another local Ganjier, certified Ganjier, Tyler McDonald, and I have started a company called Cultivated Events.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that we're going to be working on. Is we're going to be working on retreats.
Awesome.
And including cannabis as part of your event, or we can work with you to do an event for your party that revolves around cannabis, and we provide the modalities and we provide the education.
So it'll be like a destination that you'll go to and like stay for the weekend or something like that.
That's one of the things that we offer, yes.
Okay.
Or if you want to throw a party at your house,
Okay,
because
great.
it's your anniversary or it's your birthday, and you want to, just as you would call up a caterer and have them show up, and you might call up a bartender and have them show up, and we would call up us, and we'll show up with the modalities for consuming your cannabis.
Kind of like We the Stash. I love how they just have like a pull-up bar and they're making cocktails for you.
And they do a beautiful job. Our offering is a little bit different.
More complex, it sounds like.
It's more customized to the event.
And perhaps more traditional.
I love what We the Stash is doing.
Me too.
I love what they're doing.
Yeah, Josh is a great guy.
But they're very
Wonderful.
solidly in the beverage space,
They
which
totally
is
are.
Yes,
not
and we're-
necessarily where you guys
yes,
are shining.
we're more experience based.
Understood, yeah.
Pairings.
We do pairings. We help you with pairings, and like a paired course. We can work with your chef to do all kinds of things, and just bring. We offer many ways to bring cannabis to your event.
Okay. What is sage advice?
It's my opinion. It's what I
Okay.
like to tell people.
I'm all ears.
It's it's a little bit of everything that I've learned. And so in a business aspect, it's education and consulting. So education within the Ganjier community, supporting people as they go through the program, supporting people professionally, post-graduation, creating the network and community that this program deserves. And it's an incredible community, and it
amazing.
needs a home to live. So, I provide a home for it to live and to thrive, really, right? Thriving.
It truly is.
It's just such a really lovely, and it's international. Like, it's a lovely international group of people that, like, I know, like, if Lucas showed up and needed, like, I would pick Lucas up at the airport and bring him back to my house in a heartbeat. I've never met the man.
Well, and what's interesting is, I've been doing it for 3 years. And so there's sort of like different seasons of people that come through. And there are people that stay a while. There are people that come back. They pop in from time to time. And it's fun to see people's progression and see how they're utilizing it in the industry and what the connections that they're making are doing to be impactful on a much larger scale.
So what are some of the things a Ganjier can do within the industry?
Oh, that's kind of unlimited is what I like to say. And I think the easiest way for people who aren't currently in the industry and are looking to take their certification and ease into the industry is to find what you're good at doing now and do that in cannabis. And from there, work your way to where you want to be, because cannabis needs all of the same things that every industry does. So if you can be really good at what you're doing and learn the cannabis portion of it along the way, you're going to be successful.
Understood. I was at one of your Women in Weed seminars that you do bi-weekly, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. You have all these dynamic women offering up their advice as they're like navigating these new industries, coming from like completely different industries, and like, nobody knows what they're doing until they're doing it. And they're just like, keep on being persistent. And I thought, I did a class last year through Women's Venture, and I was like, this is like Women's Venture on steroids. Like, this is like down to the minutia, like very good stories about like, this is how you actually make your mission statement and, your value statement. And
and we want it to be a takeaway, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I so often go to things and I am like, that was a choice that I spent an hour of my time there, and I wouldn't necessarily always make that choice again. And so giving somebody something tangible that they can take away, an action item, or even if it's something you store away for the future, when you have something that makes you feel like you're moving the needle, I think it makes you feel like your time was best used.
for sure. Yeah, I got some really great takeaways from that. And I was just like, to myself, because I'm very like an internalized person. Like, girl, what are you doing with your one precious life? Like, get out there and like get working on this, you know?
Well, and you find out that the common thread that runs through all entrepreneurs is like they just keep trying. Like it's not easy for any of them. None of them are coming out here. I mean, there are a few, I'm sure, here and there that are, you know, had money and things like that. But most people are scrappy. Most people have been up and down, especially in cannabis. They've definitely been screwed over a few times. They've, you know, got some bumps and bruises along the way. But I think in a lot of ways, number one, it makes us more resilient, which is great, but it also makes us more apt to want to bring people up with us. And I think that's what's been most impactful to me about the Ganjier community is I'm the catalyst with which it flows through because it needs a place to live, but it's all of the people that are part of it that volunteer their time in my programming, but volunteer their time in other people's lives. There are huge, impactful relationships being built across the country, and it's going to have an enormous impact when we're at a point where there is truly a national or global industry. And it's really cool to see people who want to help each other because they have these same common goals.
Sure. What are you guys smoking?
I rolled up some, I brought some sun-grown from Fallen Oak Farms, which is actually right next to the Ganjier campus. A man named Jesse Hill runs that farm, and it's a beautiful farm atop the hill. And this was his Gorilla Gelato. They were light depths from this. No, these were full term, actually. Okay. And so he sent,
those are full season?
These are full term, yeah.
That's from a flavor perspective, that's my favorite style of growing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and this is a farmer's cut. You can see the extra little fan leaves are on there. So that's giving it a nice little protection.
That helps to preserve the terpenes, correct?
The trichomes.
Or the trichome, excuse me.
So you can see when I was pulling it apart before, you can kind of just go through and start pulling all these little guys off because they're dry now.
But if you're going to, like, you could use trimming scissors for that and make a ritual out of it.
You're shaming my method?
I'm just saying you're pawing at it a little bit. And
it's for the camera, Ghislaine. I'm giving the people a show.
I'm not, I have no judgment. It's judgment.
So talk a little bit about the process then. Take it out and kind of walk us through how a Ganjier would evaluate this cannabis.
Delicately remove the sugar leaves with a pair of scissors so as to
throw it at your friend's head until they all fall off.
So you unwrap your present like a civilized human being.
Don't tear the paper away.
Just mauling it.
Again, I'm a showman. So no, you would very delicately and delicately together. You delicately go in and remove these fan leaves and then start going in. So the first thing is actually the jar pop. So I've already taken these out. I put them in this bag, but the aroma. And so how strong is it? And there are some people that like to have it out here. They like to sit and let it waft. Some people like to open it up, stick their nose right in the bag.
That's me.
And that's sort of what we talked about with calibration. Everybody has their own way that they have to figure out how to do it. But when a 7's a 7, then we all know it doesn't matter if you stick your nose in it, if you let it sit here, if you wait an hour to see what comes out, you have your method of establishing your criteria.
So for each category, are you scoring it 1 out of 10 for a total of 100?
So it, much like the Robert Parker wine scale, there's an immediate, you get 60 points. And I don't know why that is, but that's how it works. So there's 40 points in play, and each category has up to 10 points that you can earn, and it's averaged over that category. So
and it's appearance, aroma, flavor, and experience.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yep. And so within appearance, there are a couple of different things that you can rate it on. So the trichome coverage, whether it is dense or sparse or somewhere in between, how intact each of those trichomes is. There are other factors.
And the color of the trichomes too, right? Matters, like if it's amber colored or if it's, no?
In maturity.
Okay.
So like the short answer is yes, but there's not a color scale that you rate it on.
Okay, sorry.
There are some mature, there are some strains that their trichomes are fully mature and they never turn amber.
Okay.
So that's why so is it true for most plants? Honestly, yeah, I think it's fairly, like, that's a reasonably true statement, but we know it's not true for all plants. Like, we know that there are strains that their trichomes will never turn amber. So we have to take that out of our discussion.
Gotcha.
And qualify it in that way. But it doesn't make that statement any less true.
Okay.
It's just, we have to qualify it with no, we can't use that as a determinant.
Understood.
Right. So with the aroma, we have the smell, and then we're going through and we're talking about how strong is it? Does it smell? Was there anything off in there? We're talking about the different categories. Is it earthy? Is it sweet? Is it fuel? And then we move on to the appearance, where we gently take it and we're looking at the trichome coverage. We're looking at the structure of the bud. And some of it is just noting, is it loose? Is it tight? Is that typical for this kind of cultivar? We do a lot of blind assessment, so that sometimes it's a shot in the dark.
Does trim matter?
Trim does matter, yeah. So like I said, this was a farmer's trim. This came direct from a farmer, and I like a farmer's trim. I like to have these protective leaves on. I like to put them in these grove bags where it manages the humidity. But not everybody likes that, and the market doesn't like that because you're paying extra for these leaves that you're going to take off. So
Sure.
you want it to get the most money that you can for it.
With that said, okay, I like unwrapping my own present.
Mhm.
And if it keeps, so if the bud, so a bud like this has been bouncing around in a jar. I mean, it's been cared for, and it's been shown regard, but it's still been bouncing around in a jar. And the trichomes are gone. It has trichome loss on the surface. So it's losing its
Whereas this is just losing its leaves. You're losing
Right.
trachs. I'm losing leaves.
trichomes, and she's just picking off leaves, and I'm just
Understood.
busting her chops on.
I remember that there was some actual entries for the Cannabis Cup that had a farmer's trim. So it made me curious.
Which Cannabis Cup?
Or excuse me, the Legacy Cup. Excuse me, last summer when I was going through the judging the flower.
For the CBD flower.
For the CBD flower, yeah. There was a couple that did have that farmer's trim. So I was like, that's interesting. Why would they do that? So I had to
That's actually
dig into that.
That's that was a very pleasing thing to see, because to me that is a sign of respect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I enjoy seeing that.
Okay.
It's somebody who it's respecting it's showing respect for a quality craft effort.
Any other
Sugar
notes on
leaves.
aroma that we need to go through before we move on to flavor?
I don't think so.
Okay.
And then flavor, we roll it up, and we like to leave the end open like this and take a dry hit. You want to take the dry hit off that?
Thank you. I cannot wait for the day that I can consume on camera. I'm still a little leery with
That's
my
fair.
job. So
Yes, as we all have to do. We all need to stay where we're comfortable.
yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
But yeah, so then you take in the
Can I do it
flavor.
again?
Yeah, absolutely. You can. That can be yours. You can.
Thank you, because
So tell us to describe what you're tasting.
Sure.
And I should have done a dry hit before I started smoking, but describe what you're tasting, because those are some beautiful flavors.
It's a little bit earthy, but like not super dank. It's almost chocolate, kind of. I don't know if it's chocolate or.
No, those are all very valid. Like,
Okay.
those are valid.
Okay.
Elizabeth, did you do a dry hit before you started smoking yours?
I didn't, but I've smoked this a whole bunch.
Oh, okay.
A lot. He makes a rhino wreck though.
So the Rhino Wreck is I may have come across some of it.
I may have heard that, but I also may have.
What am I missing out of?
So no, this is what I call. So it got bounced around a little bit. So visually, it's not winning. It's not looking fantastic. With that said, it is a lovely, beautiful combination that is calming, both physically and mentally, without being couch locked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So it is that really and those are actually really hard to come by.
I love that. Oh, I cannot wait.
That kind of that just everything just comes to oh yeah, and we're here now. Like, and it's fine. But you're not couch locked. Like, you can still function as a human being, but the squirrels have stopped screaming, and and your back doesn't hurt so much.
All good things.
Yes, indeed.
All of the reasons that women over 50 are the highest growing demographic of new consumers.
So yeah, in terms of flavor, then we're assessing similar things, that we were during the aroma, but there's also the smoke. And so how that feels in your mouth and, the harshness of it. How is it burning? Does it go out? How is your ash looking?
Yeah.
All of that plays a role in it. And some of that is going to be how it's grown. It's going to be, there's a lot of different factors that affect that, but taking that all into account. And then finally, your experience. Is it stimulating? Is it relaxing? Is it, there's a whole series of questions that you kind of go through there and give it a score. So
to get the thigh tingle.
Right. And I think that's where the subjectivity comes in, though, because, like we were saying, the nose knows. And if your body likes it and my body doesn't, we might have very different experiences. So what I think is a 92, you might think is an 81, or there's just, that's where we have to be careful with our subjectivity versus our objectivity.
Understood. Okay. And you look at it from how do the physical effects versus the mental effects too, correct?
Yes, but that's really more from an observation standpoint and noting that, so you theoretically could plot that data and see how each cultivar has affected you. And yeah, so it's interesting right now. There's not, we were saying it's based on the Robert Parker wine scale, because there is, not large scale cannabis sold across the US. There isn't a system like that being used. We're starting to see there's a new company out of California. It's an app called Buddhist, and they are it's essentially like Rotten Tomatoes. So they have Buddhists, who are a lot of certified Ganjiers, a lot of other industry experts that are giving scores, and then they're crowdsourcing the scores from other, I think they're called like budding enthusiasts or something like that. But it allows people to say, okay, well, these are what the connoisseurs might be smoking, but here's what the person that I understand or like my friend is, because you might identify better with someone. But then you can also find people like, I like their style. We have a similar profile that we're looking for. And I think there's just more things needed like that. It's more access to information. There's great apps like Tetragram where people can enter in their information and start tracking what they're taking. Nice. And it's a good opportunity if you ever want to have a conversation with your healthcare professional to show them that you're taking maybe a little bit more of a clinical approach if you think that they might not take you seriously. But there's a lot of good technology that we can embrace as consumers to find products and innovation.
Awesome. I'm going to definitely look into that.
Tetragram's great. Ulta is super smart.
Okay. I'm definitely going to look into that, because I think that will be helpful during consultations and try to help people get to the medicine that really works for them.
And he's got an interesting story. And I like that you opened this with each of our stories. And I think that's something that's really important for people to listen, is, because your story is different than my story is different than Ghislaine's story. Yep. And while things don't always resonate with you, they might resonate with someone else, or you might hear something that you can then work into a future conversation that can help someone. So I think it's great that you're giving people a chance to tell their stories and use their voices, because we thankfully have the right to do that. And it's sort of an obligation that we have.
Yeah. And the plant doesn't belong to anybody. No. Free the plant. Just kind of some final thoughts then. How do we get those 50-year-olds to smoke?
I don't know that they have to. I think they just have to allow people to use whatever modality works best for them and try and reserve their judgment around the smell of it versus they're making a separation of church and state that they don't need to.
Yeah. I was thinking vaporizer might be a little less intimidating, or like a dry herb vape or something like that. You know what I mean? I'm always trying to reach that new person kind of. That's where my mind goes.
It can be tougher to titrate that way though.
Yeah, it definitely can. It definitely can.
I think we with Ganjier, they encourage active listening. Mm-hmm. So that's just talking to each person and looking at them as an individual and honestly hearing what they need from the plant. and then offering up options, and then helping them on their journey to dial in to what works with them. That's one of the reasons I'm very excited to see the ratios coming into play. And I know that Stephen Cornell is playing a lot with I think he was saying it's a 5-2 right now.
Awesome.
So there's
Molly's medicine is a ratio also.
Molly does. Yeah. So there are some folks in the area that are doing some really like medicine forward, very respectful things, and that are they have really good relationships with the plant. And I just like, and we also have a magnificent history and legacy, cannabis legacy here in Minnesota that is ours, and we all get to celebrate that shared heritage, whatever the tradition. There are many communities with cannabis traditions, but it's a shared history.
One of the things that I love about your community and what I appreciate the most about Ganjiers is I think that they're very similar actually to cannabis nurses, because we study the history, we study the plant genetics, we study how the plant interacts with your body systems, all the receptor sites. I mean, I just feel like it's very similar path, and it's always like really trying to do the best for the person sitting in front of you and helping them develop their own relationship. So yeah, that's why I love you guys. It's one of the reasons. Any other last final thoughts before we wrap up, ladies?
Can't think of it. Some folks and myself are going to be doing some community education around the Twin Cities.
Yes,
in the next year or so. So stay tuned for that. We're starting at House of Oil Works.
Okay, great.
I think at the end of this month.
Jamie.
I'll let you guys know.
Yes, please do.
But we're focusing on four different evenings and 4 different topics. The first is consumption modalities. The second is the endocannabinoid system. The third is history, policy, and law. And then the fourth is homegrown.
Awesome.
And so
great topics.
Yeah, we're hoping to reach out to the cannabis curious. There are over 3 million potential new consumers just in the Twin Cities area alone, 5.7 in Minnesota.
I think they projected 700,000 people by next year will be trying to access the market, and it will be like almost a $200 billion industry.
It's gonna be really
1.65 numbers.
We'll see. I mean, there's
be real curious how they got to some of those numbers.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could see it though. I don't know. As far as money, I don't know how that's going to all shake out, but like definitely consumer side, right? Like there's people out there that want to try cannabis.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And there are people who I'm glad that it's going to be available to them as medicine.
Yeah, me too. So that wraps up our show. Thank you, ladies, very much for your time and energy. I really appreciate it. And yeah, please like, share, subscribe to the video. And I will be posting all the links where you can reach Ghislaine and Elizabeth on the YouTube channel. So thank you and have a great night.
NBC. No relation to NBC.
All right, Molly, we are here.
Hey.
We are doing, we're making a video because we're seeking sponsors. Why don't you introduce yourself first and what you do?
Thank you. I'm Molly the Kush RN. I am a cannabis nurse. I am an educator about plant medicine. I can work in a variety of different ways, but right now what I'm here to talk about is sponsorship for my podcast. So the podcast is really intended as a place where people can safely come and tell their story. I want to destigmatize cannabis and have people see cannabis as medicine through the storytelling of people, either through the industry, directly from patients, how it's changed their life, and just different vignettes and whatnot that we'll do to showcase how cannabis is really the gateway to wellness.
What are some of the guests that we've had on, just to kind of give people a feel for the show, what we've done?
We've had a variety of guests. We've had some really incredible guests, actually. Some industry folks that are doing different things, like hosting different events and really kind of connecting community. We've had my two really good friends come on and talk about this beautiful collective that we've made here in Minnesota called the Minnesota Women's Cannabis Collective. Interestingly enough, I was able to work with them during Lucky Leaf and did a bunch of different vignettes with people, and that can kind of showcase how we could offer promos to you through the use of sponsorship.
Yeah. So like we've talked to Ganjiers, we've talked to people who own like
Events.
shops, right?
Events coordinator, retailers, people that are actually crafting their own products. We've talked to people that are distributors throughout the community. So we've had, with delivery services or just being like a go-to person in a specific community for people that might not have a lot of access already. So just a different, a host of people. Yeah.
And then I can say, just speaking as the producer, there are certain things that I've had experience with shows that are, on the margins, like, where cannabis is coming out of.
Yeah.
But there's still certain things that are hard to advertise. And that's one of the things that we kind of offer is it's a place to come on and have a really genuine conversation about your product with someone who is knowledgeable.
I rolled up I brought some sun-grown from Fallen Oak Farms, which is actually right next to the Ganjier campus. A man named Jesse Hill runs that farm, and it's a beautiful farm atop the hill. And this was his Gorilla Gelato. They were light depths from this. No, these were full term, actually.
Okay.
And so he sent...
Those are full season?
These are full term, yeah.
That's, from a flavor perspective, that's my favorite style of growing.
Yeah.
Okay. My goal is always to just make you feel safe enough that we can have a genuine interaction. Like, I'm new to the industry too, and I'm really just trying to get to know people, and that's hard to do sometimes. And so this is my way of doing that. I've never been like a real surface level person, and so this is my opportunity to kind of like dig down and like get to know people a little bit. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's perfect. So if you'd like to sponsor the show, we would love to hear from you.
sponsor us.
Do you want them to reach out to you or me, Molly? Doesn't
How about
matter.
reach out to me at
Okay.
conversationswithkushpodcast@gmail.com.
Perfect.
I can be found there. Yes.
Absolutely. And we got all kinds of different packages we can do and, to all types of levels. So
For sure.
hit us up.
Yeah, Gabe is a wizard. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
MBC. No relation to NBC.